This is India Radio. In the program Spotlight, we now bring you a discussion on civil aviation issues. The participants are civil aviation experts Anu Sharma and Arindam Majumdar.
First start with Vande Bharat because I think that has been at the center of aviation, the entire industry over the last 3-4 months since the lockdown has started. We do know that India is bringing back its citizens under repatriation program which is called Vande Bharat Mission from 10th of May. 1100 flights have already been operated by Air India along with the Free Air India Express, and there are different characteristics of this program. It is being called the biggest evacuation exercise that the country has seen. In addition to that, we also been given to understand that I think 50% inbound passengers have been from Middle East, whereas 50% outbound passengers have been to the countries like the US, Canada. So a mix of different geographies have come out in the pattern of passengers coming in and going out. Also very interesting point is that, total 6.8 lakh passengers, in fact more than that, have been brought back by the Indian Airlines. So would you want to give us a breakup of how many were Indian carriers and how many were foreign charters?
Ever since COVID problem occurred in the world, countries have shut down their visas, and India had shut down the visa program since almost second week of March. So we didn't allow any foreigners to come, or India was also going outside. So basically the borders are shut. As you rightly mentioned, in the month of May, looking at the demand, because as we know, Indians work across the world and there is no geographical footprint where you find Indians working or staying or for some other reason. They wanted to come back to India, and it's understandable during a pandemic you don't want to get stuck in foreign countries, and there are job employment issues also. As we know, Gulf a number of Indians, including others, also lost their jobs. They wanted to come back to India. Looking at that, the government of India started this repatriation exercise in the first week of May, and ever since this has been kind of record. At Minister of Civil Aviation Hardeep Singh Puri today mentioned, he gave a comparison with the 1990 airlift that was also coincidentally done by Air India from Kuwait, and which helped to evacuate almost 170,000 Indians. Looking at the Vande Bharat mission is still not complete, it's still continuing, and already we have 495 passengers who have come back by Air India to the nation. Looking at the initial demand, and then subsequently it was growing, the Ministry of Civil Aviation decided that the capacity of private carriers will also be required. So they roped in the Indian private carriers like the sorts of Indigo, SpiceJet, Vistara, Go Air, who have also done repatriation flights to the Gulf. As we know, Gulf hosts the diaspora of India, a number of largest diaspora of Indians stay in Gulf due to job issues. They have taken these private carriers flight, including Air India Express, and come back to their home country. For the long-haul flights, Air India has flown to cities across the world, including all the prime destinations that Air India previously had, London, New York, Australia, and everywhere. The CMD Air India mentioned that Air India has flown to 30 new destinations which they never operated. Countries like Djibouti and New Zealand, where Air India never have regular flights. So flights were planned in a matter of week or 4-5 days, and flights were launched to get back those Indians stuck there. The mission is still not complete, as there is still demand and it is being extended. And Air India will also shortly come out with their schedule of the next phase of repatriation flights along with private carriers. Subsequently, private carriers along with repatriation flights are also doing charter flights. So repatriation flights enabled by the government, and hence the fares are capped. Kind of thing, government takes a look at the fares don't hit the roofs so that Indians who are coming back through these flights don't get discomforted. Kind of revenue flights where a party who wants to get back, there's supposedly a company who wants to get back their employees from foreign land, charters a flight and then get back a group of employees back to the country. The private carriers have done multiple such flights from the Gulf nation. Yesterday, Indigo gave a number saying that they have done quite a phenomenal number of flights that have come back from Gulf carrying Indians whose employer have hired those charters to get them back in.
Exactly. So I think that more than 2.15 lakh people have come back by Air India as of July 15th. And if we talk about the phase 4 of Air India under Vande Bharat mission, then the expectation is that they'll be able to bring back another 1.2 lakh Indians. And that's a huge number. And given the fact that now that is considered, the Vande Bharat flights are being considered as the first step in resuming international flights which have been suspended since March 23rd. And the second step is being seen as what is being called air bubble or a travel bubble, which is basically more or less a special corridor which is being created between two countries, limited number of flights, and more or less they will be on the lines of Vande Bharat. There will be categories of citizens who will be allowed to travel on those special flights. And I think under that segment only, we've been given to understand by the minister today that Air France will be operating about 28 flights, Delhi, Mumbai, Bangalore, and there will be a US airline which will be operating another 18 flights. There are discussions which have been going on, negotiations which have been going on with at least 3 countries. That is the information that is being provided today. And very soon we will be able to see more air bubbles between various countries. But more or less that will, depend upon the kind of quarantine rules that will be set by different countries and of those countries.
Basically enabling flights like probably, as you rightly mentioned, there's a bubble and the Civil Aviation Secretary today said this. A bubble is something like you have to well in a specific set of rules. No, it's not free for all travel. It's a limited opening corridor between 2 countries which are bilaterally negotiated and agreed to certain conditions. In that scheme of things, as you correctly mentioned, India was in negotiation with US, France, and Germany to open such corridors, and the minister gave some details that Air France will be operating 28 flights between Delhi, Bombay, Bangalore to Paris from 18 July to 1st August. And similarly, US carrier United, they will also be operating 18 flights between July 17 to July 31 from Delhi and Bombay to...
So do you think that in this regard we'll be able to see international flights resumption very soon? Is it round the corner?
The bubble should not be connected to any sign of resumption of international travel, because international travel not only depends on India's rules, which are yet to be changed. The government of India still not allows any foreigner to come for any travel or tourism purpose. It's only specific purpose. You have to take permission from the embassy. And also subsequently the other countries will also have to agree. Like Australia for the last 10 days only permitted 100 passengers to be carried in each flight from India from across the world, in fact, 2 cities, Sydney and Canberra. So Air India, ideally 100. If there is such limitations in international by other countries, London is closed for some days now. So normal international travel resumption will take some time unless and until I think both the countries agree that COVID is no more a problem. Alongside, there are problems even if we see in our domestic aviation scenario also, which the minister also pointed out today, there has been changing of regulations. What he correctly said was that these rules depends on how the virus behave, on the nature of the virus.
I think in addition to that, he also mentioned that currently we are just at not even at 33% utilization of the flights, and we need to reach at least 50 to 55% utilization of the available flight capacity in India for domestic operations. Right. Only after that
we can think about
resuming international flights, because only then probably some sort of confidence will be there in the airline industry as well as among the passengers to board a flight.
National flights, we need to aggregate passengers from across the cities. So supposedly a flight from Delhi you need to aggregate passengers from all the smaller cities like say Raipur, Ranchi and all. So most of the states in our country also are having varied rules. Bangalore has suddenly announced a lockdown last week. So till this type of disruptions and varied rules don't come to a normalcy, size and scale of aviation, both domestic and international, is very hard to get back to what we had before COVID.
Exactly. And I think Air India, among all the other carriers, has played an important part in the Vande Bharat flights. Being the national carrier, of course, the government did put responsibility on Air India to bring back all these Indians.
60% of the passengers have been carried back by Air India.
Exactly. And all these are COVID warriors, the pilots and the cabin crew who took part in these flights and took the risk of boarding that flight amid the pandemic. But at the same time, the national carrier, has been suffering with financial issues. It has to depend on government for equity infusion. But today, the minister made an important point that even if the airline wants to depend on the government for equity infusion, the government may not be in a position to supply that equity because there are other commitments because of COVID-19. So in that regard, the CMD of Air India did mention some of the steps that the airline is taking to reduce costs, which also in some kind of job cuts and salary cuts and also compulsory leave without pay. Would you like to elaborate on that?
This is the problem. Airlines coming under pressure, under financial pressure, is prevalent across the world. I don't think there is any airline left in the world which has not taken severe cost-cutting measures, because this industry has been the most severely hit by virus, by the effect of the pandemic. So as we know, Air India's finances were in bad shape even before COVID. The airline has a huge debt burden, and at the end of the last fiscal for which data is available, almost debt is over 65,000 crores, which needs to be serviced by the government. So without government support, the airline cannot function. So in such conditions, when the government has other responsibilities of ensuring health and improving livelihood for the poor. Minister Hardeep Puri today very interestingly mentioned that even if the airline wanted some kind of financial support from the government is not in a condition to give that. So that rightly explains why the airline has been forced to take such conditions, such steps to cut down costs. Some of the steps that you mentioned are rightly taken by the airline, like negotiation of leasing costs with the lessors and then negotiation of cost with hotels, vendors. And as part of that, there is also this human resource cost structuring under which employees can be sent to leave without pay even up to 5 years. That is a kind of severe stress, and that has somewhat underfilled the employees. But the minister said that if these strict cost-cutting measures are not implemented in Air India, the airline itself will be in a condition of not surviving, which will be detrimental to every other employee of the airline. So I think the employees also understand this, and this kind of cost-cutting measures are very normal that we may see some more going ahead in the future.
Because the minister very rightly pointed out, and that itself is an unfortunate scenario, but then in reality, there is a surplus of aircraft, there is a surplus of trained people, and this is a problem that all the airlines are facing. And into that, very interestingly, the minister also pointed out that we all are going through pay cuts. So that, in effect, is also being implemented at Air India. I would like to just quickly touch upon the matter regarding fare caps. We all know that fares have been capped since May 25. There is an upper limit and there is a lower limit on every route that an airline operates. The earlier perception was that these limits on the fares will end on August 24th. There was a timeline for the fare cap. But now I think because the demand is still muted, we still have not reached 33% utilization of flights, or in other words, less than 33% flights are operating of the pre-COVID level. That situation, I think the minister pointed out at some sort of a short extension of the fare cap beyond August 24th.
So he mentioned that correctly, that the fare cap was implemented. So the minister today elaborated the reason for it. He said that it was for interest of both consumers and the airlines to, like, if there is low demand and the fares of the airlines fall much below the operating cost, then there's a chance that some airline may go bust, and that will have a detrimental effect on the economy. On the flip side, other side also, airlines suddenly, because they were shut for 2 months and they need to recover their costs, suddenly jack up their fares, the consumers will be in a detrimental state. So to have a balance between the two, the government came out with a fare cap which up to, as of the current announcement of the government, is up to August 24th. You rightly mentioned that the Minister Puri said that, like, looking at the current conditions, this fare cap may need to extend a bit further because we don't see any resumption in scale and size of domestic operations. You mentioned a few while back about some other topic that the airlines are even struggling to reach even 33% of the allowed capacity. So if such a prevalent condition continues, the minister said that the fare cap needs to be extended even beyond the current stipulated date of August 24th. But that, he said, will be a short extension.
The last and the most interesting discussion today was held on the topic of drones, which is very exciting for a lot of youngsters. And we've been given to understand that 20,000 drone manufacturers have been registered with the government. It's a project that has been sort of an ambitious project for the government over the last couple of years. We have seen this project growing under what the government calls the Digi-Sky program. And today the minister also mentioned that Indian Oil has sought permission from the government for use of drones for pipeline checking. Drones are also being used in housing projects, in project implementation on real-time basis. And there is a widespread need to use drones even in e-commerce business. So what do you think has basically restricted the business of drones from really growing at a large scale? Because this industry has been facing hurdles consistently.
You very well mentioned, like, I think everyone is very aware about the potential of this drone industry and their usage in future like that. But with an object, so drone is UAV, unmanned aerial object that is flying in the sky. So with an aerial object flying in the sky which is not controlled by, there is not a pilot, there is huge concerns about security issues. So it's not only in India, across the globe, discussions on security about drones, implications of that is being discussed, and India has been one of the early movers in this sector. So one thing with the other usage, why in a midst of almost 7 to 8 weeks in Rajasthan, the drones have been able to control these locust menaces. Like how? By spraying pesticide from an altitude, which in terrains which would otherwise would have not been possible through human intervention or through any other vehicle. So this success of this drone feature has encouraged the government to take this journey forward. And what we understand is that the government is heavily pushing this sector where domestic manufacturing, domestic operation drone will be further encouraged. states right now there exist 16 yellow zones where one can test their drones and show utility. That is to be further extended by 2nd of October.
Right. So I think we can only hope for better days for the domestic civil aviation and the various industries associated with it, especially at this time where everyone is looking at some sort of uncertainty and is on a wait and watch mode. But we wish the sector very best.
Thank you, Anu.
You were listening to a discussion on civil aviation issues. The participants were civil aviation experts Anu Sharma and Arindam Majumdar. You may email your opinion about this program at airnsdtalks@gmail.com.